Welcome to Mangastorian's Complete Story Series. Today we're going to be bringing you more Berserk. Now, at the end of our last video, Guts and the Hawks had a fight at Doldry Castle. Though everyone thought it was a mission that couldn't be won, Griffith formed a plan and was successful in capturing the castle. Now with the war over, it is time for Guts to do what he was planning on doing, leaving the Hawks to walk on his own path. It was late night after the return of the Hawks back to Midland Castle, as Minister Foss meets with a group of hooded figures. The men discuss Griffith's recent victory and how they need to remove this man from any potential power for his victories. The king plans to award Griffith by making him a general and awarding him and his Hawks the title of the White, the highest rank within the armies. But Foss has a plan. He will put a deadly poison in Griffith's wine during the victory celebration. Some of the men show concern, asking if this is going to work, and then a voice tells them not to worry, and the Queen of Midland steps forward. Foss learned of the Queen's affair with Julius, and spread rumors that it was Griffith who had plotted his death. Because of those rumors, she worked with Foss to set up this little arrangement for Griffith's demise. The Queen had loved Julius, so now she will have her revenge, and not as the Queen of Midland, but as a single woman. The next morning, the Hawks all return to the castle as the crowds gather, and they praise everyone for their victory. Even Princess Charlotte cheers everyone from her balcony. However, as the Hawks walk through the town, the Queen watches over, plotting Griffith's death. When the hooded group meets again, Foss receives a letter, and after reading it, his eyes widen. And the Queen asks if there's a problem, and Foss assures them that there is nothing to worry about and walks away screaming, "Damn you!" in his mind. As the night sets, the Hawks step into the banquet hall in their honor. Everyone looks around because it's very uncommon for a mercenary group like them to ever be this close to the nobles. The girls all swarm over Griffith and soon Guts, but for Guts, this isn't his type of environment, and he decides he's just going to step away. Guts sits down and he watches all of the nobles swarm around everyone, including Casca. Casca looks back, seeing Guts, and she quickly runs over to pull him away with her. She tells him that these men are just so persistent. He's going to accompany her for a while. Guts stares at her and she asks, "What's wrong?" And he says, "I just didn't know you were into that stuff, like wearing a dress." Casca then asks him, "What about you? I've never seen you come to any of these types of events before, so why now?" Guts looks up at the moon and says, "I figured I would see what it was that Griffith was working so hard to obtain just once." Before long, guards all call attention as the king enters the halls. Casca says that she's gonna head back in, and Guts tells her, "I'll be there in a bit." As she walks off, Guts begins to think about how the only reason that he came here is so that everyone in the Hawks don't hear about what's going to happen next. The king announces that he would like to honor Griffith and his Hawks on their bravery for succeeding in what they thought for 100 years wasn't possible, the capture of Doldry Castle. Tomorrow he shall bestow Griffith with the highest rank in the Midland Army, the title of White. Among that, all members will be given the title of Knight and Peerage, making them nobles. Griffith looks through the crowds to see Guts outside, and he smiles at him. While everyone celebrates on Griffith's awards, Foss watches from afar as the other men in his group ask if he's okay. Foss tells him that he'll be fine, but the more he stares at Griffith, the more worried of a look sets in. Soon the wine is passed out for the toast and the king tells everyone, "Cheers!" And Griffith puts the cup to his lips, and then seconds later, the cup falls to the ground. Everyone stops talking to see Griffith falling over, and they run over to see what's going on, but during the confusion, Guts is nowhere to be seen. Outside of the castle, the server of the wine flees, thinking how this was the easiest job he's ever had to do. But as he runs further, he sees a figure, and that figure is Guts. With one swing, the server's head flies off, and Guts heads back. Meanwhile, over in another tower, the Queen and Foss meet back with all of the conspirators, discussing how easy it was to execute their plan. Foss mentions that he has already had the server taken care of, but for now, he will go and check on how everything is going. As he leaves, he shuts the door behind him with a worried look. The Queen and the rest of the conspirators sit around, and the Queen begins to smell something burning. Everyone gets up to run to the door, but the door is sealed shut, and suddenly an explosion goes off. The Queen rushes to the top of the tower to avoid the smoke, and then she looks down to see him, Griffith! She begins to shout, "How is this even possible? The doctors all said he was dead!" And Griffith tells her, "It would certainly appear so. That's the way I arranged it. It wasn't poison that I swallowed, it was a mixture that would temporarily make me appear dead." The conspirators start shouting for him to save them. It was the Queen and Foss's idea, but Griff tells him, "This is war. There is no spectator seat on the battlefield." The Queen shouts, "A commoner like him would burn her? The wife of the Midland's king? She will not permit it!" However, Griffith tells her death on the battlefield doesn't separate royalty, nobles, or commoners. Those simply defeated die. The fire begins to spread as the ceiling starts to fall down around the Queen, and Griffith turns his back, and he walks away. After walking down the stairs, he says it's over, and Foss stands there stating nothing. Griffith then asks if he is afraid of betraying his partners. Or is it because he actually helped kill the Queen? Foss finally asks how was it that he had learned of their plans, and Griffith tells him that it was the day that they first went out to battle. He looked back from the hall and he saw his look, and he knew that there was something in there that they would become enemies. For it was that moment. His eyes were muddled with fear. Griffith then pulls back the document blackmailing Foss and rips it up, stating they all need to think of their futures, so let them put those silly grudges behind them. Griffith then leaves to pay the bandits that helped him blackmail Foss. As they walk off, they say maybe they should blackmail Griffith, and then they see a figure in the distance. Guts looks at him, and he pulls out his sword. A little while later, Griffith walks to Guts as he stands over the bodies of the bandits, telling him that it seems he's done. Griffith then asks if it's safe to leave the minister alone, and he tells him he's sure he learned his lesson by now. And then Griffith stomps and asks Guts for him to be using these filthy methods, not even getting his hands dirty. Is he a terrible person? Guts laughs, stating, what could someone who killed 100 men even say about that? Guts slaps Griffith on the back, telling him, we should head back. We need to go calm down Casca. Speaking of which, you didn't get to see her, did you? She actually showed up to the celebration in a dress. Later, Guts and Griffith return to the castle, and everyone sees that Griffith is in fact not dead. Casca begins to cry, and Griffith tells her that he's sorry for making her worry, but she looks really nice in her dress. As the days goes on, the funeral for the queen is held, and talks of how the death of the queen and the assassination attempt on Griffith was carried out by Chuda. But even with the bodies that were found outside of the castle, no one was able to connect the dots to the truth, and the truth fades into the darkness. A month later, Guts begins packing his things, getting ready to leave. He looks back at his armor and his broken sword one last time, and he smiles. Over in Casca's room, she looks out to see it snowing, and then sees Guts walking through that snow. She chases after him, asking if he's really leaving. Sure, they may have fought in the past, but they just got over a major obstacle. Guts tells her that he's already decided he can't be buried in Griffith's dream. A little while later, Casca begins to sulk, and Judo and Corcus appear, and Judo says to come with him for a little bit. The three men head off, and Casca begins to think about what can she do. She knows Griffith can stop him. A little while later, Judo takes Guts to the tavern to ask what's going on, and he says that it's not a sudden decision. He's already made up his mind. It's been fun for him for these past 3 years. It's not like he's unhappy or anything. Corcus then stops him, asking, why throw it all away if all you know is how to swing a sword? Guts thinks about it, stating, you're right, I can only do just that. But when I look at Griffith, I see someone who can take himself to the top. Griffith doesn't want someone who is weak by his side, so he wants to stand next to him with his own ability. He will not let him look down on him. Corcus starts yelling that all of this talk sounds like a kid. Everyone knows Griffith is special, and it's all because of him. As Corcus goes on, he decides that he's not going to waste his time having this talk with Guts. He already can't stand him. Once Corcus leaves, Judo mentions that as for him, he's kind of a jack of all trades. He's better than average with any kind of a weapon, but really, he has no specialty. So that's why he decided that if he can't achieve greatness, he would rather serve under someone who will. 3 years ago, he said he might find his calling in the Hawks, but it seems that he was wrong. Judo then walks with Guts as he gets ready to leave, and he tells Guts that he should take Casca along with him. Guts tells him no, she's in love with Griffith, and Judo says even still, she won't ever be with him. Even now, for Griffith to advance, he will have to do something that will put him over the top, and that means Charlotte. If Griffith was to marry her, then his dream would be reached very quickly. Then Judo asks, what do you think of Casca? Guts says that it's rare to see a girl who can fight side by side with men, but she's just a companion. For him, well, she's after Griffith. A person like him would never stand a chance. The two continue on their way outside of the city and see Casca and the others waiting for them. Rick Hirsch runs up stating how cruel it is for him to be leaving so quietly, and then Guts looks at Casca, and then from behind her, Griffith steps forward. Griffith asks if he's really leaving, and Guts tells him yes, but he's sorry. And Griffith's eyes widen at that response. Everyone tries to tell him to stay, but Corcus steps up stating that the Hawks survived before Guts came, and they'll survive after him. He always hated Guts ever since the first day that they met. It's because of his face. The presence of it annoys him. While Corcus continues to go on, Griffith stands in silence. Guts tells everyone farewell, and as he walks by Casca, he thinks about how Judo told him that he should take her with him. Instead, he continues to walk. That is until a sword blocks his path. Griffith says that once he belonged to him, and he won using a sword, so if he wants to leave, he'll have to win like last time. Guts asks, can't it just be farewell? But after looking at Griffith's eyes, he draws his sword. Casca tries to break up the fight, but Guts tells her to just stay back. Don't try and stop them. Griffith stares at Guts just like he would an enemy. Guts had betrayed his trust, so he doesn't blame him for being angry. And so, everyone watches as Guts and Griffith get ready to do battle. As they stare at each other, Guts is unusually calm. Casca begins to think about how everyone will go back to normal once Griffith wins. But is she wanting that because she wants Guts to stay? Griffith inside of his mind says that there's no way that he could possibly leave. He will not permit him to go. He will not allow him to leave the Hawks. But what can he do? With Guts' strength, he can only block a hit or two. Griffith continues playing out how the battle will go, only seeing his chances of winning being him cutting through Guts' attack and possibly killing him. Griffith then rushes forward to attack, and Guts pulls back on his sword, and then Guts swings down, meeting with Griffith's sword, pushing it down. The dust flies, and through it, Guts stands, holding the blade next to Griffith's head. Griffith drops his sword and sits there. Guts tells everyone that he's leaving now, and Casca watches. She tells him to wait, but Guts continues to walk, not even looking back. Griffith remains silent, but in Guts' mind, he tells him, "It's all right. I was just a pebble in your path. You can get up and continue on your journey." And that concludes the chapter 29 to 36 arc for Berserk. We'll be coming back with more of this next week. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to follow us at Twitter, at Mangastorian, and I'll see you next time right here.